how effective are the resistance bands in building strength, Allie? So, what helps relieve the pain, and are resistance bands helpful in relieving pain, not just building strength?
So, what is that one thing that you want to challenge everybody to think about or do to just gain a little bit of insight and knowledge in this particular area that we're talking about? Hey, everybody, welcome back to season 5 of Beyond the Steps, presented by Apollo Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. Today, we're talking about how effective resistance bands really are for building strength. We've got another fantastic conversation for you today. Melissa, tell everybody who we have with us.
Allie Christensen joins us today. Her love affair with movement started as a young dancer and grew as she danced with a number of professional companies. A career ending labral tear led her to becoming an instructor of gyrotonic method, strength and conditioning, and corrective exercises, and eventually the founder of Align Fitness by Allie and the Dancer Strong Movement. Thank you so much for joining us, Allie.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be here with both of you.
So, this happens to so many dancers, and a lot of times they don't even know where to turn once they have a career-ending injury. But your subsequent recovery led you to create a strength and mobility training program for dancers, which is just an amazing pivot. With that being said, how counterintuitive was it for you? And is it when you start working with dancers to the way that they normally train? Was there a big adjustment period in thinking about how your body moves compared to simply engaging in traditional training?
I mean, absolutely. When I got injured, it was more than 15 years ago now. And the resources that we have available now just weren't broadcasts, slash, probably weren't really available. I do know now there were some people who were in this like dance medicine field as we have now, but we didn't have social media. We didn't have the access to know that this was out there. So my resources were either dance or very traditional like strength training for people who go on stage and want to look strong. And I knew I didn't want to do that. And I knew that dance was failing me in some ways because I had injured myself. Basically, my training had kind of failed me, or is how it felt at the time. So as I went through this injury, there was so many mind games that happened, even more than the physical training that I needed to be able to get over this. It took me a couple years. It took a lot of failed attempts. I did yoga and Pilates and gyrotonic and stretching. I did pokes needles in me. I did all of the modalities that I think we associate with dancers. And there's nothing wrong with those. They serve a purpose and they fit in a certain puzzle piece to the whole picture. But what I was not willing to embrace at first and ended up having to embrace was strength training with heavy weights. And I remember the moment that I actually like said yes to it. Like I was so nervous. I did an exercise. I did it well, and my hip stopped hurting. And that was the first time in like 4 years that it had hurt or had not hurt. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe there's something to this. So, just the journey of accepting that something that had been told to me that would be detrimental, that would change my aesthetic of as a dancer, that would ruin any chance I had of being a long, lean dancer. That's the story I was told. And I had to go through the physical experience of saying, if I can't dance, what's the point of having a long quad? Like, really? If I can't even do it, who cares if I'm bulky because I can't do it? So I would rather not be in pain and be able to move than to be fearful of this bulky muscle fatigue that we're talking about. So once I got over that, I really realized there's a lot that is missing in the dance world and a lot that we don't take as athletes and information that's available to us about injury prevention, dealing with injuries, training for higher jumps, bigger flexibility, stronger legs that we just were not taking into the dance world. And when I started diving into that, applying it on my own body, basically relearning how to dance after an injury like that, I realized that there were a lot of things that I was never taught or things that were passed down through dance lineage. You know, our teachers are just repeating what our teachers have taught them and taught them and taught them. And until very recently, I feel like that cycle was not being broken very often. And when I started to try to break that, I realized this kind of works. and just fell into working with dancers again. And now that's where I'm at, where I work with dancers in person, virtually, and then I have online programs. And I work with dancers of all ages, but I work with a lot of adult dancers. So, meaning kind of like 16 and older, and then up into our like my age and 90-year-old women who want to dance, want to move, want to be able to have an art form and grow and a passion. And they're really confident about growing, even though we're not 13 anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I feel like the industry is at a point too where it's really ready for that. I think all of the things you just said, I'm sitting here nodding and going, yeah, because that is the problem across the board with the industry that we're in is that it is very cyclical. There is no standardization. You know, you grow up and you regurgitate information that you were taught and you pass that on, you become a teacher and you pass that on and nobody really it becomes status quo, right? For everything. What sports in your mind require good ankle strength? And is that a trick question? Is it all of them? Like, do you feel like it's all of them?
Yeah, I mean, every sport requires good ankle strength, right? Like we're standing, we're moving, we're going around. But I do think that dance requires an extremely high amount of ankle stability and strength. Um, I really can't think of another sport that would require as much because we are so precise and literally going up on our toes, rolling over, jumping on our ankles.
Yeah, the repetitive nature. Yeah, the repetitive nature of the movement alone. Like if you think about any other athlete, how they're not repeating that same movement over and over and over and over the same way every single time and do it over, do it over, do it over. Like dancers are really unique in that way.
Yeah, and that's one big difference between dance and I think every other sport, well, almost every other sport. It's that other sports are reactive. When you play basketball, football, tennis, whatever, you're reacting to the situation. And there's a lot of research of how strength can be built by being reactive. Is seeing what's coming at you and having to make a split second decision, as opposed to dance is very regimented. We know exactly what's going to happen next. We build a pattern because we go over and over and over, and it requires actually just kind of a different maybe nervous system connection. Maybe it's part of the brain. It's just a different way of training than any other sport. And because of the overuse side of it, where we are repeating motions over and over, not only are they extreme motions that we're asking, they're repetitious. And we don't have a standard in dance that says you can only do a certain amount as I'm going to call it like a collegiate level athlete. So many of these dancers are working 20 plus hours a week, sometimes up into 40. And there is no standard saying this is too much. Where in other sports in high school, if you play on like a baseball team in high school, they literally will pull you from the game and say, you did 90 pitches. You're done. I don't care. I don't care if this is the most moment of our team. You hit that 90 count, you're done. And next week you can come back. So there's more regulation in, I think, a good way that we just don't have in dance yet. And that's a big topic and a big thing to tackle.
That's like a whole nother show. But yes, that a lot of people don't even realize there is research out there that tells us you really shouldn't dance more hours than your age, right? So we talked about ankle strength. Now I want to talk about mobility versus strength versus flexibility. So dancers want those beautiful pointed feet, right? But all of those things seem to be opposite of each other. So how do you get them to all work together? Can you have all three? Talk about that a little bit.
I mean, you absolutely can have all three. And I get this question a lot about the difference between strength and flexibility all over the body. I think it's important for us to remember that strength is the ability to move your body through space with or without weight, standing. Flexibility is technically the passive range that a joint or muscle can move through. Mobility is the two together. So that's actually the term for strength and flexibility moving together. Mobility is what dancers want, no matter what you say. And I don't get too picky on dancers or teachers when we throw one word around or the other, as long as we truly understand that what we're going for is actually mobility. You want to be strong and flexible to as close to the same range as possible. A really easy example to think about is when you bring your leg up into an extension and you grab your leg and you pull it up, and this dancer can pull their leg up here. And then as soon as they let go, the leg drops down. So this is flexibility. It's passive, meaning my arms are helping me. And then this is active range, which would be strength and flexibility together, hence mobility. So we're really looking for a good recipe of both working together. And one of the most mind-blowing things is realizing that when you feel tight, it could be because you're weak, that it's not just a stretch. There has been so many studies, and I have seen it every single time I work with a dancer. When they come in and say, my Achilles feels tight, the top of my foot, my big toe, my ankle range is just not good. And what stretches should I be doing? And we do a strength exercise, probably not even for their foot, but up the chain a little bit. And we try to get other muscles to be part of the show and do what they need to do. And then when the foot is not so bound up or trying to do more than its job, the ankle can move, the toes can pull back, and the flexibility, that passive range comes. So really looking at the foot is it's so important, but it's just a piece of the puzzle. And looking at up the chain, the calf and the quad and the hip and the core is almost more important first if you're lacking range of motion in your ankle. That's kind of always a fun magic trick. Or magic trick is when people come in and they're like, okay, my foot, my foot, my foot. And we do a hip exercise and then their foot feels better. Our body's meant to work together. We cannot isolate out one part of it.
So I want to hit on the resistance band controversy. There's a lot of opinions about whether resistance bands are effective at all. So how effective are the resistance bands in building strength, Allie?
So you have to look at, okay, what does this athlete have to do? They need to jump, they need to be able to push off their toes. And if they're going to reach NBA status or whatever it is, they're going to be the best at that thing. So we're going to take that research and we're going to apply it into dancers. There's a doctor who has pretty much, as far as I know at this point, some of the most researched evidence on this topic with whether a stretchy band or it's called eccentric loaded motions. So we're looking at the stretchy band as we know it, like putting on our foot, doing all the ankle motions. And then eccentric loaded motions are going to be things on your toes where they pull back into kind of that demi-point position, but they're loaded. So that means you're standing on it, you're pushing off of it, and you have a weight on your body. When they did this study and they took a group of athletes who did stretchy band and then a group of athletes that did loaded eccentric motions, within, I think it was a 6-week period, they saw that the people who did loaded eccentric motions gained 4 to 6 times more strength than the dancers who did those stretchy bands. So I think that that's pretty clear that the bands are not doing what we think they're doing. I am not totally against bands, but they have a place. And when I understand what I can expect out of them, they work great. But if you are looking to get stronger, to have a better point, to be able to get up on point shoes or up on your releve or roll over your foot more, evidence is not suggesting that your TheraBand is doing that for you. It's actually probably just your basic dance motions that have gotten you there up to this point. And if you did add in some loaded eccentric motions, 4 to 6 times the strength in 6 weeks.
Very, very, very interesting. I definitely have to learn more about that because I mean, I think we need stock in resistance bands in my studio.
When I'm looking at resistance bands, I use them for articulation. I think they are so good for teaching a dancer how to figure out where their foot is in space. It's a really nice tool to figure out how to keep your toes long and not let them crunch in and under. It definitely works and engages a muscle because we all know you can get tired from doing your foot exercise on there. So it has a place. Another major place that this is going to fall in is after an injury or after a surgery. So a lot of PTs are going to recommend banded motions after an ankle sprain or a surgery, and it has a place because you're in one of your weakest moments after an injury or surgery. So that band is going to be the right amount of resistance because you are not able to stand on your ankle. You're not able to jump or land on your ankle. So it definitely has a place. But if you are a healthy athlete who dances regularly and has no pain in their body, in their ankle, the TheraBand's probably not strong enough for you. It's not going to do the trick to get you to the next level. So there's definitely a place for it. It's just not in this average population that we're throwing out there and saying that you've got to do all these things.
When we talk about ankle pain, so what helps relieve the pain, and are resistance bands helpful in relieving pain, not just building strength?
My first advice, and this is probably the most important, is if you're in pain, go see a rehab specialist. That is, your body is telling you something is not right. So we in the dance world, this is one of those stigmas I really hope we're breaking. One is no pain, no gain, right? So like just fight through it. We're strong. We're silent and strong. We don't talk about the things that are bothering us, that it's a weakness to tell a teacher that something's hurting or that it's hurting more than one day. I have so many dancers that come to me. They come to me first because they're injured and working with a PT and they want to like help bring it into the dance studio. Not everyone's lucky enough to have a great dance PT. So I kind of bridge that gap of this is what you're doing in PT. Let me help you take this into the studio. And so many of the dancers are afraid to tell their teachers that their foot is still hurting, or it's more than one day. So breaking that stigma is going to be probably the number one thing that's really going to help us when it comes to pain. But go see that rehab specialist. And then second thing I always ask my dancers and I want them to think about is this from a trauma? Like you stepped off a curb, you rolled your ankle, there was an incident, it hurt, it probably snapped, there's bruising, there's swelling. That's a trauma. It's a traumatic experience that happened. This could happen landing wrong, rolling off your point shoe. You feel it in the moment. The second type of injury that happens, and it happens for most of us, is an overuse injury. This is going to be something that just builds on. You don't really know when it started. It just kind of crept on. It comes and goes. And then the longer you wait on it, the more severe it seems to get. The pain gets more intense. It's lasting longer between bouts. So when you have that trauma, that's definitely we probably need a little bit of rest or modification. Not just it's not just pull you out of dance. And I actually work really hard not to pull dancers out. And all the PTs that I work with are the same. We don't want you to stop moving. We just have to move smarter. We have to figure out what you can do and how you can still challenge your body. Because one of the worst things that we can do having an injury is if your toe hurts, why would we let the rest of your body get deconditioned? And that does not mean that you have to work and work and work and work those extra 40 hours, but let's not have you just sit on the side of class watching, taking notes. Let's not take you out of everything. Let's teach you how to move smartly and to understand what you're actually trying to accomplish so that you can be a smarter dancer and a better dancer at the end of this. If it is an overuse injury, then we really do need to look at what created this. What muscles may not be working to the right balance? What habits in alignment do you have? Maybe it's overuse just from pure too much dancing. Maybe we need to add some rest time into your week. So the pain is there to tell you. It is the specialist's job to help you figure out what that means. And it may not always be the same thing. One injury might tell you one thing, and then later on another injury is going to tell you another thing. And I wish I could tell every human that you're never going to experience pain, but that's not true. You're going to have pain. It is not as scary as dancers build it up because we have so much emotion attached to it, right? It's the end of your career. What are people going to think? They're going to think you're weak, that you're not trying. You may not reach your goals. But if you learn how to kind of communicate with the pain and you have some information and a specialist in your corner, that pain is just like little side talk that tells you what to do and you do it and then you're fine. So that's really the biggest thing I wish that dancers could take away from dealing with pain, to be honest.
So before we get to homework, what are your top 5 tools outside of strength training that you would recommend for strong, flexible, and pain-free ankles?
I would say that sprinting is an excellent activity for strong toes. In fact, if we kind of think back to, I was talking about that research that they found with the loaded eccentric motions, sprinting was one of the things that they threw in there. You do not need to be a runner. I am not a runner. You do not need to be a runner. And running is not going to bulk your body. Sprinting is the quick motion. It's that 10 seconds on, a minute off. It is just challenging you to push off your toes as much as you can, as quickly as you can. So I try to get dancers sprinting when they're looking at that loaded eccentric motions. Another thing that I love for dancers is jumping like a human, not like a dancer. So when we're jumping like a dancer, you're going to have pointed toes. You're going to be thinking of straight legs. Your torso is going to be stacked on top of your hips. But when you jump like a human, like your life is on the line, if I said you got to touch the ceiling because there's $1,000,000 up there, or if you don't make it over the river, you're literally going to be eaten by the 10,000 crocodiles. You are not going to point your toes. You're not going to keep your hips underneath yourself. You're going to jump like your life depends on it. You're going to get jumping mechanics. And if you think of, I think basketball players are a really good image to think of. When they go to jump to spring, they're not upright. Their butt goes back, their knees bend, there's a hinge in their hips. So jumping like a human will help your ankle strength and foot strength, and it will make you a better dancer jumper. So jump like a human. Another tip I have is always hip strength. The hips, the glutes specifically, medical world, they call them the fountain of youth. They literally help keep everything functioning. They keep your back and shoulders functioning. They keep your knees and ankles functioning. And in the beginning, I said that sometimes it's people are blown away by working on hip strength and their ankles feel better. Having strong glutes and strong hip girdle will absolutely facilitate strong ankles for yourself. And I think the last tip I have, this is actually a tool if you want to look into it. I'm really not a fun tool person. I believe in simple work that you can do anywhere. But there is one tool from this researcher who has done all this ankle work, and it's called a Toe Pro. It's basically like a sponge that's in a little triangle, and it just forces your toes into that eccentric loaded position that we've been talking about this whole time. And that's a lot of his research came from how can I create something for that. So it's super simple, but when people are rehabbing with a PT and coming to me, or if they're looking at that toe strength specifically, I actually know that it makes a big change. There's a little device I have that measures your toe strength. You don't need to go buy it, it's fine. But I can see that in week 1 of toe strength, and then 3 or 4 weeks of using this Toe Pro correctly, their toe strength jumps quite a bit just from doing calf raises on this Toe Pro. So if you're interested in adding something, that's what I would. It in no way is a have to though, but it's a fun little thing to have at home. So I think those are those top tips there.
I love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. So we are going to go to homework. So what is that one thing that you want to challenge everybody to think about or do to just gain a little bit of insight and knowledge in this particular area that we're talking about?
There's actually research behind this. So if you're interested, just Google Australian ballet calf stretch takeaway. Their PT, who is a very renowned PT in the dance world, has had the Australian ballet take away calf stretches and added 25 calf raises. That's it. So they just made that substitute. And with that, they saw a huge reduction in their injury rate in the company within weeks, but for the whole year. And the pain and their jumping and everything else got so much better. This happens to every dancer, but I am gonna name drop here because she will like attest to this. I work with Catherine Morgan, and the first thing she did was come in and tell me that for 25 years, she's a professional dancer with New York City Ballet. Her Achilles have killed her entire career. I said, just this week, let's just not stretch your calves. And she trusted, and she came back and was like, what the what? Why do my feet feel fine now? And she will tell anyone. I work with her and her students, and she's always like, stop stretching your calves, stop stretching your calves. It really is a game changer because we stretch our calves so much as dancers. Every time you plie, you're stretching your calf. You do not need to do excessive amounts. And the other thing that happens is we're actually stretching out the tendon, the Achilles tendon, kind of overdoing it. Tendons don't like to be stretched. Muscles like to be stretched, but not tendons. And a calf stretch can be very tendon heavy. So if you want to give it a try, go for the no stretch and then see what happens after a week or two of not doing that.
That is so great. So that's how fast you will notice a difference is a week or two. You'll notice it. That's incredible. Yep, that's your homework. So don't stretch your calf. Stop stretching your calf. Allie, how can everyone get a hold of you? How can people consult with you, work with you, follow you? You have great social media content. So kind of share all the things on how people can access you and what you have going on.
So if you want to find me, my website is dancerstrongprograms.com. And you can find me on Instagram and YouTube at Align Fitness by Allie. I do have a lot of content on there that's all for you guys. I do this because I love dancers, and I'm passionate about assisting you to do better than I did. So if you have questions, please reach out, send me an email, send me a DM, tell me that you saw us here, and I will help you figure out what your next step is, whether that be a resource for somebody for a referral or a program or a tip. I will always help you. So please reach out and do better than I did so that we're enjoying our life, we're enjoying our passion, and we're teaching the future children of the dance world to do better than we did.
Thank you so much, Allie. And I'm going to tell everybody out there, put on your Apalas as well, because they are also a tool that you need to have in your toolbox when we're talking about recovery and protection and support while we're doing this intense activity, whatever it is. Put on your Apalas. Allie, thank you so much for your insight, all of the information. I learned definitely some new things that I've never heard before from this conversation. So I'm excited for everybody to hear it as well.
Yes, absolutely.
So much. It was lovely to talk to both of you.
Today's episode was our resistance bands useless for strength training. A special thank you to Allie Christensen of Dancer Strong Programs for joining us this week. Bree, you're amazing. Thank you for joining us.
Back at you, friend.
We are trying to get to 100K in our subscribers, so please hit that subscribe, follow button, like, comment, and share. Invite someone else to join you in viewing this series every single week. This series has been around for 5 seasons. You can find seasons 1 through 4 on YouTube at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. If you have an idea for a topic that we have not talked about yet, or you want to be a guest, please DM us on any of our social media platforms. We want to talk to you, and we want to hear what you want to hear about. Join us next week for a brand new episode as we chat with Brandon Cornet from Dance Device Lab. You have your homework from Allie. You have your homework from us. Please make sure that you continue your journey beyond the steps. See you next